On Maundy Thursday, we extinguished the last of the Lenten candles as a symbol that the light of the world had gone out. But at the dawn of this new and glorious day, we learned that the light which the world tried to extinguish cannot be put out. Today we light the candles again, proclaiming the transforming power of God. As the light returns, we give thanks that God's transforming love has been, is now, and will ever be at work within us. Today we celebrate new life, new joy, new possibilities. Christ is alive and living among us. As we relight the candles, we acknowledge that there is still pain and suffering in the world, but we place our trust in God and in the way shown by Jesus Christ. We recognize that in the midst of darkness, there is light. In the pain of death, there is life. In the face of what might appear to us to be overwhelming odds, God is at work in us and in the world, working for justice and peace, compassion and love, and life abundant. Christ is risen. Christ lives in us. For wherever we gather in his name, he is here. Alleluia. Our second scripture this morning is John 20, verses 1 through 18. This is John's account of the first Easter morning. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciples set out and went toward the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with them, the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple, who reached the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed. For as yet they did not understand the scripture, that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples returned to their homes, but Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb. And she saw two angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head, the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them that he had said these things to her.
Can you believe it? Easter is here already. Wasn't it just yesterday that we were all here for Christmas Eve? But as they say, time flies, whether you're having fun or not. Today is a day of celebration. The season of Lent, beginning with ashes to remind us of our own sin and mortality, is over. This Lent is a dark and difficult but necessary time. This last week, Holy Week, is the most difficult of all when we walk with Jesus to the cross. Our Maundy Thursday and Good Friday services walk us through the dark places, so our celebration this morning can be even more joyous. Today we celebrate resurrection, but for many that is a hard concept to comprehend. The title of the sermon today might be interpreted in 3 different ways, depending on where we place the accent. If we say, "Can you believe it?" it brings into question whether the Easter story is believable or not. Can we believe that Jesus actually came back from the dead? Was it a miracle? Or was it a ruse? Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Or did he never actually die? Was there somewhere in that tomb a secret passage through which he escaped? Those are questions that have been debated for centuries. In the ancient world, it might have been entirely possible to bury someone who was not dead. Preparing a body for burial was much different than today. Embalming consisted of wrapping the body in linen cloth and preserving it with perfumes and spices. In the gospel reading today, that is what was done to Jesus' body after his death on the cross. Nicodemus brought 100 pounds of spices to preserve the body, and they placed it in Joseph of Arimathea's nearby tomb. No one really knows what happened next. Scriptural accounts jump from the crucifixion to the empty tomb. Now, today there might be security cameras in that tomb, but we can only speculate. And yet we know that something happened that we can't explain. Some believe that Jesus' band of followers might even have stolen the body and claimed that Jesus had been raised from the dead. It's called the swoon theory of resurrection, that Jesus only fainted on the cross or fell into a temporary coma and didn't really die. After all, there was no coroner to verify it. Now, as stories go, the accounts of the resurrection in the different Gospels are a bit unbelievable. And there are plenty of inconsistencies, from who was at the tomb that morning, to who saw Jesus and who anointed the body, from how many angels there were to what they actually did and said. Remember, the Gospels were written many years after the resurrection. But no matter which version is the most accurate, or whether the truth is closer to a synopsis of all of them, we are not the only ones who find it difficult to believe this incredible story. After the crucifixion, even the disciples did not believe they would ever see Jesus alive again. John says, "For as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead." They fled in fear, living without hope behind closed doors, afraid that they would be next to be crucified. Mary Magdalene, when she went to the tomb early on that third morning and saw that the stone had been moved, without looking in the tomb, jumped to the conclusion that Jesus' body had been stolen or taken away by the gardener. That brings us to the second interpretation. Can you believe it? One of my favorite movie scenes is from Oh God, where John Denver's character Jerry, a grocery store assistant manager to whom God appears, is having trouble believing. And George Burns, as God, replies, "If you find it hard to believe in me, maybe it would help for you to know that I believe in you." That's powerful. In today's gospel reading, the beloved disciple does not see or hear Jesus and has no proof of the resurrection, no concrete evidence, no photos, no eyewitnesses. We're simply told that he saw and believed. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "All that I have seen readies me to trust the Creator for all that I have not seen." But we're rational people, right? And sometimes we doubt, which is okay. If we had been eyewitnesses to the resurrection, it would be easy to believe. But like the beloved disciple, we must decide in light of Jesus' absence, not his presence. We call that faith. Faith is what made the resurrection believable for the beloved disciple, and it's what makes it believable for all of us. Not everyone comes to faith in the same way. But the beloved disciple, the very first believer in the resurrection, came to his Easter faith the same way that you and I do, by not seeing the risen Christ. Now, I suspect that Christ has never physically appeared to any of us here this morning. No one has touched his wounds. Our belief is based on the words of the angel from the other three Gospels. He is not here. He is risen, as he said. And on Jesus' words, blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe. In the first meeting of our pastor's baptism class this year, we took a trip out to Nathaniel Green Park, where we sat near the water and talked about baptism, how the first step toward baptism was faith. Our kids in the class will remember those 5-finger exercises we did. To illustrate faith, Nick stood on a small rock bridge and talked about how he believed that it would hold him and not fall down. That is faith. Paul wrote to the Corinthians that if Christ has not been raised, then our faith is in vain. For him, what came forth from the grave was not a physical body, but a spiritual one, which is one theory as to why Mary did not recognize him. Or maybe in the pre-dawn darkness, she just couldn't see clearly. And the centuries-old question remains: did Jesus indeed have a different body? And how did he get out of the tomb? Was there another opening somewhere? Or was there a miracle? And what does all of that mean for us? Episcopal priest Barbara Brown Taylor wrote that Easter began the moment the gardener said, "Mary," and she knew who he was. That is where the miracle happened, and where it goes on happening, not in the tomb, but in our individual encounters with the living Lord. Which brings us to the last interpretation. Can you believe it? Because faith is personal. It is individual. Each of us has to come to it in our own time and in a way that makes sense for us.